you. So those are the three of those. Now there's also three different types of notices, and there is a test question on these, so you definitely want to know these. The first one is an actual notice. An actual notice is a piece of paper that tells somebody something. So for example, let's just say at lunchtime, I'll tell you what was happening. One of the properties that my husband has under contract, the appraisal came in, and it came in okay, which is like rare right now. We're having so many problems with appraisals, but this one came in okay. So he reached out to the buyer's agent and said, hey, I need a notice. That notice is your buyer releasing their appraisal contingency. So then, now that doesn't need to be signed by the seller. It's just an actual notice delivered to us telling us, hey, I'm removing my contingency. Okay. Now let's just say the buyer says, hey, that's fine. I want to remove my contingency. That's fine. But you know what? I want to change the settlement date. Can I put that on there? No. Why? Because that requires two parties' signatures. It requires the buyer and the seller to agree on it. But the buyer and seller do not have to agree on the buyer releasing his own contingency. Okay, so anytime you're changing something in the contract, you're really going to use an addendum, which requires two-party signature. Okay, and if you're removing one of your contingency, let's just say I'm the seller and I added a contingency of my own to a contract, which is not standard, but I added it. Okay, maybe I added that I'm not going to sell unless I find a home to buy. We call that a home of choice contingency. The seller has to find a home of choice. Okay, and let's just say I'm the seller and I do find my home of choice. Well, then I would deliver notice to the buyer that I'm removing my contingency. So the buyer knows now that there's no more contingency and that we're moving forward on the contract. Okay, so that's an actual notice, just a piece of paper, okay? And we call it a notice because it has one signature, okay? One signature. Now, a constructive notice is something totally different. Constructive notice is you had the opportunity to look this up. So let's talk about this. Through the freaking years, there have been people who get upset about things. And they're upset about things that they didn't even discuss with us. For example, like I can give you one of mine. Well, I'll give you some that are common across the nation. People sue their agent because of the square footage. I didn't know it was this big, or I didn't know it was this small. Okay, well, those don't win in court because the judge says, that's public record. You could have looked it up. I'm really sorry if you're unhappy with your realtor because your realtor didn't tell you, but that's public record. I can tell you another one. Sex offenders, they're public record. You can't sue me because you didn't know there was a sex offender on your street when it's public record. Okay, so those are big ones. I had one where a client told me she wanted to be as close to the school as she could. So, okay, let me tell you something. I was proud of myself when I found that house that is literally 2 doors down from school. Didn't even have to cross the road. I was so proud of myself. I mean, I was like, this is what she wants, right? This is what she told me all along. Well, a week before settlement, really all of her contingencies were gone at this point. And guess what? She says to me, oh my gosh, I didn't know that my kid would have to walk to school. I'm like, it's 2 doors down. They don't even have to cross the road. What's the problem? She's like, well, I wanted them to ride the bus. Okay, well, wait. I'm literally blown away right now. Like, why didn't you tell me that? You told me you want to be as close to schools as possible. And I was proud of myself because I found as close as I possibly could get. Well, guess what? She's like, I don't want this house anymore. And now, guys, because I am a good agent, I said to her, fine, I can help you get out, even though she didn't have any contingencies. And I had to beg and basically like sell my soul to get her out of that contract, which I did. But the point is, let's say she had come to me after she bought. Well, if she would have come to me after she bought the house, it wouldn't have mattered because that is something she could have easily looked up. It's public record. So there's no reason. She knew the school. She could have picked up the phone and called. In fact, I actually gave her all of the, she's ready to go. She's going to go to the store. Lucky her. So that's something that they could have easily, she could have easily searched. Okay. That's public record. All right. Now, please be aware, we all should try to gather as much information and ask as many questions, but there are going to be times where your clients didn't tell you something. Okay. And that's just it. It's going to happen. Okay. And at that point, could they look it up? For example, let's just say the client never told me that they had goats. Like all the times that I go into houses and discuss, and because you're going to learn, you don't know these people. And you're going to learn a lot about them because as you're looking at houses together, they tell you a lot about their life. They tell you about their kids and their in-laws and their parents and who's going to be staying in this room and what this room will be used for. And yes, we like to party. Yes, we like to cook. No, we don't like to cook. No, we never have people over. I mean, you're going to get to know them a lot. Okay. And if it's a situation where they don't tell me that they had goats, right? And then next thing you know, and I've never had anybody have goats not tell me. I'm just using this as an example, guys. I love goats. I think they're so cute. I will not own one, but I think that they're so freaking cute. They're very hard to handle, apparently. I've always wanted one, but then I'm like, no, when I really learned all about them. I'm just using this example. Let's just say they don't tell you about the goats. And then they move in and they find out that they don't have goats. And now they want to sue me. Well, I'm sorry. Public record. They could have easily called zoning administration and had this discussion. Okay. Now, of course, you and I should always talk about zoning, and I always provide them the number and say, hey, if you have any questions about zoning or any regulations or anything, you should definitely call this number. Zoning administration will help you. Okay. So if you're wanting to do anything that's not the typical, you probably should call. Like, for example, I'll tell you, there was a case. I remember it was a court case. I study court cases because, they're very important for learning. So I love to read the court cases. And then I can prepare my agents for what not to do. And this one particular agent, the client told her she wanted to run a doggy daycare. Well, she knew, the agent knew that the past owner ran a kid daycare. And so she told the client, well, they had a kid daycare here, so you shouldn't have any problems. Okay. First of all, why would we say something like that? We don't know. We should never answer, right? We should say, that's a great question for zoning administration. In fact, remember, we're just the resource. We're not supposed to be the source, really, ever. Our job is to guide them in the right.
My apologies.
Oh,
I couldn't hear what you said.
My watch. Oh my gosh, what is happening with it today? I keep maybe hitting a button or something. All right. So again, we don't know whether a kid daycare or doggy daycare that's not even the same thing, but she got sued. And I honestly feel rightfully so. She told the client that they would have no problem with that. And she didn't even know the answer to that. Like, why would she say that? I don't know, but this will get you in trouble, guys. So don't feel like you have to answer a question, but do say and feel the obligation to find out. So there are, to this day, people who ask me questions and I don't know the answer. And I tell them, that's a great question. I'll find out for you. And they'll say, okay. They don't care. They're not going to be like, oh, well, she doesn't know anything because she didn't know the hot water heater's age. I mean, how am I supposed to know somebody's hot water heater age, right? Or roof age? I'm seeing the house for the first time just like you. So no, I don't know. But the public knows that. And so if I say, that's a great question, I can find out for you. And then I write it down so I make sure I don't forget, right? And then I find out they're 100% happy with me and they trust me. But when you're just saying answers very quickly and then they find out later that you're wrong, that you've completely lost their trust forever. They will never refer you. They will never want to work with you again. And that's a really bad thing. Okay. So we got to just be careful with what we're saying. Inquiry notice. Okay. So let me just use a case that I heard about as well. Situation where this buyer went to see a home, noticed a stain on the ceiling, but didn't ask any questions. Of course, he buys the house, apparently didn't have a home inspection, bought the house, and then sues the owner and the agent for failure to disclose. Okay? Well, the judge said, did you view the home? He said, yes. Did you see the stain on the ceiling? And he said, yes. And they said, why didn't you ask? Well, I just assumed they were going to disclose it to me. Well, the real truth is, guys, we don't have to disclose obvious things. We only disclose things that are hidden, okay, that they couldn't possibly. If I know the hot water heater doesn't work, a buyer's not going to know that, right? Unless they're like hanging out for a while and testing things, or they get a home inspector, right? But if they don't get a home inspector, it is our job to disclose what we're aware of that's wrong with the house. That's latent. It's hidden. Okay. Now, of course, I should be saying to my client, hey, there's a stain on the ceiling. We probably, no reason to think it's like new. Okay. It could be old. It could be new. We don't know. But this is something we probably should have a home inspector or a contractor look at. They have these little moisture meters and they can tell whether a leak is active. A lot of people have stains on their ceiling that are old. A lot of people. In fact, in my house right now, I have one. Okay, I replaced the roof 2 years ago. And right before that, I got a stain on the ceiling, which is why I replaced the roof. That stain is still there. And not because I didn't try. My son actually, I asked him if he would, paint over it. And then he said that the paint that the ceiling paint that they have doesn't match. And so he tested a few places and he's like, it doesn't match. And I told him, well, you're probably just going to have to paint the whole ceiling then. We're just going to have to do something because we can't be leaving that stain on the ceiling. But most people, you will find most people have stains on their ceiling that are old. It could be from a sink or a toilet, and they just haven't fixed it. And they will at some point, but it doesn't mean it's automatically something wrong, but it should be investigated, right? Hey, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, I'm walking through this house with you and I'm noticing that stain on the ceiling. We probably should make a note to ask about that. And then your buyer's like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I saw it. Or no, I didn't even see that. Because sometimes I hear that. I didn't even see that. Okay, no problem. That's what I'm here for. I'm the eyes and ears. I'm not a home inspector, but I'll point out what I do see so that we can make sure we ask a home inspector. Okay, it should be investigated. Okay, so the judge threw that one out because they were like, you're an idiot. You should have asked.
So once you let's just say I have a right here on my ceiling, should it be in writing?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
It's going to be notated.
Yes, in the sales contract. So we actually have a disclosure form.
Okay.
And we actually write down anything that we know that is wrong with the home. And I tell sellers that they don't have to disclose. Virginia does protect people. Okay. Sellers don't actually have to disclose anything, but I tell people, here's the reality. You will be sued later. So why not just be honest up front? Let's either
just say something now.
Yeah,
right.
just either get it fixed or just disclose it. And people are fine when you disclose things. They're not okay if you don't. And then they'll sue you afterwards. And you and I don't want to be in this lawsuit. We don't want to deal with this garbage. So Let's just be honest. Plus, I always feel like if I'm honest with someone, then I'll get honesty in return. So when I go to buy a home, if I did the right thing, chances are higher that I'll get a seller that does the right thing for me. That's what I'm always hoping for. Not always does it happen, but for the most part it does. And so I try to do the right thing. So they don't technically have to disclose, but I always encourage my sellers to have it fixed or disclose it. And it's always usually dumb stuff, right? A lot of times we can get it fixed beforehand, so we don't have to worry about it. But at the end of the day, it's the seller's choice. But if I know about it, if you and I know about it, we are required to disclose. There's no choice anymore. So if a seller tells me, hey, the bathroom toilet is leaking, well, guess what? I now have to tell every single person, whether the seller wants to tell them or not. I am required to tell them. You are required to tell them. Even if our client tells us not to, disclosure laws are the top laws. Nothing comes above them. Even agency laws. Agency laws are under disclosure laws. So even if my client tells me not to disclose something, the disclosure laws are higher and I have to. I don't have a choice. Which doesn't make sellers very happy. All right, so what happens? We get under contract. We go